Welcome back to episode 24 of the Talking Shaman podcast. As I should say, the road to West Ham as Halifax Town have finally secured a playoff spot. Now, tonight I brought on Mclean, who currently works within BT Sport as a pundit and formerly played for the likes of Peterborough, Grays, and Barnet. So, Aaron, how are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, good, thank you then. So, Aaron, talk us through this season then. What were your expectations at the start of the season when you look at all these clubs? Has it planned out how you expected?
Similar to how I expected. As everyone knows, I predicted Stockport would win the league at the beginning of the season. Don't get me wrong, the early months, it didn't look like they'd even be in with a shout, but bringing Dave Challoner in has totally transformed their fortunes, and now they're literally 4 points away from securing it. So yeah, it's similar to how I thought it would go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know you said actually on Sunday on the Stockport Wrexham game, you predicted Wrexham to win and got that correct as well. So you seem to be very good with your predictions.
Yeah, do you know what? I look at the strengths and weaknesses of each team, the form that they're in, and I've been there. You know, what these players are going through now. I've been there. I've been in those positions, and the position that Stockport are in, especially. I've been in that position where you get into the end of a season, all of a sudden your form dips, and it's difficult to recreate that and find your form again. So Wrexham are the total opposite end of that, and they're flying at the moment. So yeah, I had a feeling.
It's just about getting over the line, isn't it, from a Stockport's perspective now? Like, it is that end of season, experience when you're just wanting to try get over the line and get into the Football League, and they still haven't secured it yet, have they?
Yeah, it's difficult. It's difficult because once you do have that dip in form, and I think it's easier chasing than it is being chased, because every single point that you drop and the teams behind you start to creep and creep and creep. Wrexham have made up 11 points, which is ridiculous. So the pressure mounts week by week by week. And I think the Stockport players are suffering from that. And to coincide with getting sendings off, Sarcevic getting sent off. The other lad, I can't even remember his name at the minute, but getting sent off, Collar, sorry. Two massive players for him. And you can't afford, at this stage of the season, you need your best players playing well. And to lose those two for 3 games each was a massive, massive blow for them.
Yeah, it's injury troubles also happening to Stockport as well, where Wrexham have probably gone through that bad period when they had the likes of Paul Mullin injured. I believe that O'Connor, McFadden was also injured, who just come into the club as well. And Wrexham are looking like the dark horse now. You are expecting to win the title, aren't they?
Well, they're in a great position. They've recruited brilliantly. The players that were there, I really like Luke Young. I think he's class. Jordan Davis is probably the best midfielder in the division. And bringing Ollie Palmer in to complement Paul Mullin was an absolute masterstroke, because those two players are good enough to go and play in League One tomorrow.
Championship.
Exactly. They're brilliant players. So it was brilliant recruitment. I think that they're probably best placed, that even if they don't go up automatic, I think they'll still be strong in the playoffs, because they're in good form. And going into a playoffs, there's nothing better than going in with good form, as opposed to just limping over the line and just scraping through.
Yeah. So this is where a bit of bias might come in, but when I look at Halifax in the playoffs, my heart's saying, Halifax are going to go up for it because we feel like we need to get promoted. But my head's saying I can see Wrexham getting up just on a realistic basis when you look at how Wrexham are currently playing. And this is quite an interesting fact. Now, if Wrexham did win the title initially and Stockport slipped off, which is still slightly unlikely, what would you think of Stockport entering into the playoffs?
I think they'd be struggling, if I'm honest. I think that the momentum is with the likes of Solihull, who are flying. I think that a lot of people at BT have said for quite a while that Solihull will win the playoffs. personally, I think if Wrexham end up in the playoffs, I think it will be Wrexham. But if Stockport, I do honestly think if Stockport end up in the playoffs, I don't think they'll win it. I think that it'll be too big a blow to recover from.
Yeah, I'd agree with you on that basis. When you think of Stockport and how many points they were clear just a couple of weeks ago, and how Wrexham have just, gained in points in recent weeks, just shows what a hard run to the end of the season can have to a team which have suffered from. So you mentioned earlier about it being easier for the team that are chasing them. A slightly different experience now when you're looking at Halifax and Solihull now chasing for third place. Now, before the Aldershot game, it was actually mathematical for Halifax Town to win the league, and there were a few of our fans that were quite optimistic, thinking, you never know, we can do it. There's only a couple of results that have to go our way. Potentially that Stockport Torquay game might be the game where it doesn't go our way, and that might be the reason that we don't win the title. Where I think it was more realistic from our point of view that we want to try get in the top three, because it means so much to us when we look at our home form at the start of the season. It's the best home form in the division, and although we play that first round at home in the eliminator, if we don't finish in the top three, we're having to go away to somewhere like Wrexham or Solihull, which for me personally, when I went to Wrexham, it wasn't a nice experience. And after a last minute equaliser from Aldershot, near enough, it meant Solihull went above us, and it was quite a blow for us. Now, am I right in saying you attended that game? I believe you said on Twitter.
Yeah, I was at the game, and I just looking at Halifax. They were in total control. First half, the Ryan Hall's pulled off about eight saves. It just seemed like the ball wasn't going to go in. Once the first goal went in, I was sure that he was going to go on and win comfortably. But it's always dangerous playing against a team like Aldershot, who have secured safety. They've got nothing to play for now, and all they're doing is now they could throw caution to the wind and just throw attacking players on. If they lose 2 or 3, it makes no difference to them. And playing those kinds of teams who really just want to spoil the party, that's what they want to do now. They want to take a scalp of one of the top teams, and they managed to get a point. Probably didn't deserve it, but they go home happy.
I think the stadium deflated when it happened. We were thinking, oh yes, this is a brilliant win, and we always have the feeling that first half it's just a safe half. We try to get to half time with it being 0-0. Second half, shooting towards the south stand where the atmosphere goes, and that's where we'll get our goals from. And as soon as we went 1-0 up, we were thinking, 2-3-0, this will be a comfortable game. And fair play to Aldershot from a non-biased perspective, but it was quite emotionally drenching when that goal did go in, because you look in the long run, we're probably not going to get in the top 3 unless we at least get a point at Stockport, which is going to be difficult, isn't it?
It's going to be difficult, but it's not impossible. Stockport have lost 4 out of the last 6 games. So Stockport at this moment in time are far from unbeatable, and Halifax on their day can beat anyone. For Halifax to be where they are with the budget that they've got, the size of the squad they've got, is incredible. Pete Wild should probably get Manager of the Year when you look at what he's done with the budget that he's got. Yes, Stockport are brilliant, but they've got a huge budget. Yes, Wrexham are brilliant, they've got a ginormous budget. Solihull have done brilliant. Halifax have done brilliant. Chesterfield, huge budget. Dagenham, fairly decent budget. So the teams that you're competing with, Grimsby just come down from League 2. The teams that you're competing with and where you are, me, if I was a Halifax fan, I wouldn't be too disappointed. I'd be looking and saying, do you know what? We're probably somewhere where we shouldn't be when you put things in perspective. We're overachieving, and we're still really in with a chance. It's just which team turns up on the day, really.
And it's something for me and a lot of Halifax fans who are watching want Halifax to get back to the Football League, because we have a lot of history in the Football League, and so do other clubs like Wrexham, Stockport, Chesterfield. But it feels more important for us that we get promoted this season, because if we don't, are we going to have a season as good as this, where we're going to have an opportunity as good to get back to the Football League? Would you agree?
I think this is probably the hardest season. Having Wrexham and Stockport in the division this year, this is probably the hardest for anyone to get promoted out of it. And next year, if one of those don't go up, it's going to be exactly the same. But you've got a brilliant manager. As long as you keep your manager, he seems to have the ability to go and bring players in who haven't performed at other clubs or haven't got opportunities at other clubs, improve them. The environment that he has is obviously a brilliant one, because you can tell when the players go out, they want to play for him. So I think as long as the manager's there, then you're in safe hands, and you'll always be in and around it. You might not necessarily be as good as you've been this season, but I think that you'll always be in and around it with that manager, definitely.
And that is crucial that we do keep our manager. Now, I just looked at the table from last season, and if it was this time last year, Halifax would have won the league by now with 84 points. But the budgets this year have just totally blown up. You know, in recent years, we've seen an increase in budgets of the likes of Notts County coming down, Grimsby have come down this season, Wrexham, you know, a historic club. It's so hard, isn't it, this league, to just get out of it. And we're seeing a side like Wrexham, who've got League One players, Stockport League One players, potentially Championship players, struggle to get out of this division.
It's such a hard division. I actually found playing in the National League was harder than playing in League Two, which is sounds
a couple of years ago as well, wasn't it? So.
Yeah, and this was a while back, and it's not changed. You know, I honestly think that there's a lot more investment in the National League. You know, those clubs that you've mentioned are huge clubs. All feel that they should be back in the Football League. All have huge investment to get back in the Football League, and only two are gonna do it. So every single year it's gonna be difficult. Every year, better the standards getting better and better. And for Halifax, it's just about staying in the pack, and if you get an opportunity, like if Halifax get to the final, there's no reason why they can't win it, regardless of who you play against, because you have some standout players. You look at Waters, you look at Warburton. You've got players in your team that are match winners, and it's just getting there. That's the hardest thing is getting there.
Yeah, you can. Any side could beat anybody on the day, like with the FA Trophy a few years back now. Beat Grimsby, who got promoted, and we got relegated to the National League North. It does feel like to me, if we got to the final, we'd win it. But the one side that I would want to avoid in the playoffs would definitely be Wrexham. Like, I think BT Sport were covering that game, but I went to Wrexham away with Halifax, and it wasn't a pleasant experience at all. And other sides have struggled, big clubs like Stockport, like Wrexham have done the double over them at the racecourse this season. Yeah. Chesterfield, you know, I think they got a point there. Notts County got a point there. Grimsby have been defeated there. So many big clubs have actually been defeated at the racecourse. And would you say that is the fortress of the league?
It's definitely the place no one wants to go, for sure. I covered that game, the Wrexham Halifax game. I covered that, and honestly, on the day, it looked like men against boys. They looked just so strong physically, the running power, and then obviously had the goals to finish you off. And I don't think Halifax turned up on the day. I don't think we saw the Halifax that had been playing the weeks before, because you went into the game in good form. But going to Wrexham with that crowd behind them, the expectation and the form that they've now found, it's a difficult place for anyone to go. I don't think anyone wants to go there. But at some point, if you want to get promoted, if they're in the playoffs, someone has to beat them. And it's even better if you can go there in the semi-final and knock them out, because then you don't have to play them at the London Stadium.
Yeah, and Wrexham, they are such a historic club at this division, like many clubs are. Wrexham, they've been in this league for so long, so you sort of get the feeling that fair play to them if they do go up. This investment, they deserve it because they've been in this division for so long. Would you agree?
Yeah, well, I think it's 14 years that they've been in this division now. You know, the new owners have come in, and they're not looking to stay in the National League. You know, with the greatest respect to Wrexham, they've not come here because they love Wrexham as a city, and they want to settle down and you know, retire in Wrexham. They've come here because they've seen a club with great history, really good prospects, and they want to see a club progress through the leagues. I'm sure that their ambition is to see Wrexham in the top division at some point. And with the infrastructure that they've already got, they're well positioned to go on and do that. It's just a case of whether or not this crop that they've got now has what it takes. And I'm sure if they don't, they'll reset, they'll go and buy more players, and next year they'd be even stronger than they are this.
I don't like to imagine it if we don't get out of this division and Wrexham don't either next season, because I'm sure that wouldn't be a pleasant experience either. So I've got some people in the chat who said stuff. I think this is a Stockport fan. I'm early great to be in this title race, but slightly nervous, but I'm hoping for us to beat Torquay and then see what happens on Sunday. Yeah, that game against Torquay, that's going to be crucial, isn't it, for Stockport? Huge game.
If Stockport come out of that game with 3 points, then I think they'll be fine. I think that they've got, in terms of their team, they've got enough experience to be able to go and do it on the last day, if providing they've got that cushion. But Torquay are in decent form. Torquay, you know, they dealt with Chesterfield comfortably the other day. Gary Johnson is my old manager. He will be desperate to win that game, because they're not in the playoff shake-up and lost in the playoff final last year. He'll be desperate to, you know, put the boot into the potential winners of the division. So it's going to be a very difficult game on a Wednesday night under the lights. It's just which team turns up. If the Stockport that we all know and that went on, I think it was 20 games at winning 20 out of 21, or it might be more than that.
I think that one defeat was against Torquay, you know, in the reverse fixture.
So again, that will give Torquay confidence, because they know that they can beat them. It's a difficult game. I think Torquay is a very, very difficult game at this stage of the season. But if Stockport want to win it, you have to go and you have to beat everyone. You have to go to a Torquay and win. And it's at home as well. You know, last 2 games at home, you wouldn't want it any other way. So it's everything points to Stockport going up at the moment, but you got to get the points on the board.
Yeah. I think we had the feeling a couple of weeks ago when we were comfortably in third. I think it was just after that Chesterfield win. Oh, we'd love it if we went to Stockport and Stockport had won the league and we could just focus on getting into the top 3 comfortably and, you know, just partying for that day, to be honest, and looking forward to the playoffs. Unfortunately, it's not looking like that for either clubs, is it?
No, and that's what happens at the end of the season. At the end of the season, you see some results that you're like, how on earth has that happened? But that is, A, because the pressure of, you know, the teams pushing for promotion or pushing to trying to stay up, there's huge pressure. The teams that have nothing to play for all want to prove a point. They now want to go and say, all right, well, okay, we're not challenging for promotion, but because you are, we want to be the team that stops you. You know, that's just football. And if you don't handle that pressure in the right way, what's happening to Stockport right now can easily happen. And Wrexham could have happened to Wrexham, but they've just found a way to get through it. They've got through it. They've just ground out the results. And then when they're on song, they are a frightening team.
Could you imagine being a Stockport fan if Stockport ended up bottling the title and Wrexham went up? Seeing the Wrexham fans and Stockport happen to go through the playoffs, you know, being in the Football League, having to play an extra 2 games against some of the best sides in the division. It's not a pleasant experience, is it?
It's not. And I don't, not just the fans, the players, you know, because mentally you prepare yourself. When you're so far clear at the top of the league, you're in such good form, you mentally prepare yourself for winning the title. That's just human nature. Then when things start to turn, which we've seen with Boreham Wood had the same kind of thing, where you go from, your mindset is going and win the league. Then all of a sudden to switch your mindset to, okay, now we've got to go through the playoffs. That switch is difficult to make. And the teams like a Solihull, like a Notts County, who have just been focusing on, let's get in the playoffs and then we go from there. That's been their mindset the whole time. Mm-hmm. They're probably better placed to be able to go on and deal with that that situation than a team that wasn't never thinking of being in the playoffs.
The current playoff standings compared to the, going into the new year is totally different, isn't it? I know you had Chesterfield top of the league. Now they might not even get into the playoffs if they, get defeated against Woking this Sunday. And then also Dagenham, I believe Dagenham have to win against Wrexham, which is going to be a very interesting game too. You think of that and Chesterfield being, top of the league. I don't know if you'd agree with this. When they were top of the league, or they'll probably, I think they were 4 points clear. And I've even said, as a Halifax fan, when we were second, I can see Chesterfield going on and winning the league. Bournemouth, like you said, they were second, third, looking like they were going to potentially go on to win the league. And Stockport, you have them like 8th, 9th, struggling under the previous manager. It's just funny, isn't it, how the dynamic of the league can just change and progress over the course of the season.
100%. And it's a mixture between form. So you look at Bournemouth up until the FA Cup defeat were excellent, looking like they could really go and push to win the title, keeping clean sheets at home, unbeaten, and were really good. Weren't scoring loads of goals, but could just score one and win and hold out. Once they lost to Everton, then all of a sudden they couldn't buy a win, and then you're going 8, 9, 10, 11 games without a win. That's relegation form as opposed to promotion form. Chesterfield, once Shamanga got injured, you then look and say, right, where's your goals? Mm-hmm. Every team that is in and around the playoffs looking for promotion has goal scorers. Chesterfield don't have that. Once Shamanga was gone, and he was really their only source of goals. Asante's got 6. I think Khan's got 6 now, but he scored a brace a couple of weeks ago. They don't have goal scorers. It hasn't worked out for Quigley. So that's what's really cost them. And they've had a lot of injuries, in fairness to them.
Yeah.
So they'll be lucky if they manage to get in. And then Stockport, change of manager, a manager that won the playoffs last year. They had the players, but he's just tweaked it. He made them defensively sound. His home record as a manager is incredible. When I covered them a few weeks back, and I think he'd lost something like, I don't think he'd lost for over a year in his home games, whether it be at Hartlepool or at Stockport. It was his record was incredible. So, and they've been able to go and strengthen. They're bringing in players from the league. So it's all about how you finish. It's not about the start. It's not about the middle. It's how you finish. And the teams that finish strongest go into it best place. That's all I can say.
Mm-hmm. Sarkovic was a crucial, person who they brought into the club as well, Stockport. And when you look at people like that who Stockport are bringing in compared to Halifax, I think Stockport were like 7 points clear at the top of the table. They had Eastleigh to play. They made a load of signings from like Hartlepool, etc. You're thinking, why do you need them? I think Canning also came from Hull City and thinking, this is mad. And then they go and fly down to Eastleigh. That's the difference in the league, isn't it?
100%. It's almost, we said it's almost split into 3 leagues at the moment. You've got the top 2 who are able to go and almost handpick players from the Football League, who have the finances, who are and have the expectancy on them. Then after that, you have another batch of teams that don't have the riches of your Stockports and your Wrexhams, but are all very good teams and all worthy challengers for promotion. And then you have the bottom section where, to stay in the division is an achievement. And some teams have overachieved. You look at Barnet last season, and you look at Barnet at the beginning of this season. You would have banked on them to go down. Dean Brennan's gone in there and he steadied the ship. Their form's been very up and down since then for a while, but they're staying in the division and they've been comfortable in it. Woking's fortunes have turned and they've picked up, and then you've got the likes of Kings Lynn, and Dover was always going to be in trouble. So it is almost like three mini leagues in one league, and the top two are right at the top of it.
Yeah, like you say, you've got your big six who are getting 5,000 plus every week. Then you've got your Halifaxes, your Aldershots, your Torquays. And then you've got the smaller clubs who are just, like you said, just wanting to stay in this division. There's a huge, like you said, there's a huge divide, isn't there, in players, in the quality of teams this season and the fan bases, the histories as clubs, isn't there? And it is something that's becoming a problem, isn't it, that the EFL only allowed 2 teams promoted to the Football League. Do you think that that's something that needs to change in the near future?
I think it's definitely something that needs to change. I think the standard of the National League now, the top 6 clubs could go into League 2 and compete comfortably. You know, you look at what Sutton have done this season. You look at Forest Green have just got promoted. You know, they were in the National League a few years ago. I think that the teams that go up are probably better equipped to go on and mount a challenge for promotion again than a lot of the teams in that division. So I do think it's something that they need to look at. The problem you have is it has to go to a vote, and I can't see any EFL clubs voting for an extra team to go down from League 2 for an extra one to come up. So I think that's what you're always fighting against. I don't see it happening anytime soon, but when I look at the standard of the National League and how it's progressing each year, the standard that it's at now, I definitely think it's something that I'd like to see in the near future. And obviously, every club needs to be full-time. Every club in the division has to be full-time before that can even be a question that can be asked. But once that does happen, it's definitely something that I feel should happen because of the strength of it.
You talk about full-time. Now, Altringham have just currently gone full-time, haven't they, into that full-time period as a club now, for the first time in their history as well, in the National League. Do you think this is a perfect opportunity for them to progress as a club and potentially try get into the Football League in the upcoming years?
100%. I had a good chat with Luke Garrard at the game on Sunday, and he said to me, watch out for Altringham next year. He said they will be a force because they've got a really good manager, really good group of players. Their recruitment's always very good, and now going full-time will give them that extra boost. You look at some of the results that Altringham pick up throughout the season and you're like, wow, where did that come from? But he said that no, they've just been kind of biding their time. They're not a full-time outfit. So in terms of the consistency, they struggle with putting those consistent performances in. But what he said, once they go full-time, they're going to be a force. And I don't disagree with him. You know, having seen them play, they are a very good outfit. And I think going full-time is always beneficial to any football club.
I looked at Altrincham at the start of the season. I looked at some of the players that they brought in. I think they had Matty Coslow the previous season, but he'd been injured. Now, I remember him at Halifax Town, and he was a quality player for us. Didn't work out at Fylde. And you knew when Altrincham signed him, you thought, right, that's a perfect signing for him. Now, some of the Isaac Marriott, I believe, they signed from Bradford Park Avenue as well. Yeah. He was whipping it up in the division below for Bradford Park Avenue as well. And there's a lot of players around that squad, Dan Mooney as well, that you feel next season they are going to be a force in this division and potentially be going for the playoffs. We've seen sides like Halifax Town, Stockport, who've recently gone full-time after, previously not being full-time since, they've restarted as a club or dropped down the divisions. We've seen how much of a change it can have, a positive change on sides. Like us, for example, when we were at part-time in the division, we were pondering around the relegation zone. Since then, since Wild's come in and the new players, etc., we've seen that we're pushing for promotion, which is something that all Halifax Town fans want to see, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And it's been like that for years. Even when I started my career and I was playing in the National League, I went to Aldershot and we went full time, and then we got to the playoff final and lost out to Shrewsbury in the playoff final. I then went to Grays. Grays then went full time, and we got to the playoffs, lost to Halifax, unfortunately. Yeah. And that season, we probably should have won the league. I think I saw Accrington were the best 2 teams far and away in that division. And we should have got promoted that year. To be honest, we just bottled it at the end. Similar to what I'm seeing now, we finished the season poorly and then limped into the playoffs, didn't have enough to get over the line. But just that full-time change, players being together every single day, being able to work on things that you can't when you're part-time, the fitness levels, everything, it makes a huge difference. And for Altringham, that's going to be a huge bonus for them.
Yeah, I've been asked to mention this as you were a Grays player when Halifax defeated you. And, you know, a lot of people on Twitter, all positive, were saying against that Grays game when Halifax played them, you were one of the best players and you're a player that Halifax would never want to play against again.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. That game, well, the two legs, the first game we didn't really turn up. We didn't turn up properly. I think we ended up being 3-0 down. Dennis Ollie scored 2 brilliant goals and got us back in the tie. But we were confident that once teams came to our place, we'd be able to turn them over. We turned most teams over that season at home because our stadium was tiny. It was like right next to like flats overlooking it. It was just a small pitch. And we had a really good team. You know, I think the majority of our team went on and had league careers. So we was expecting to go on and win that, but it just didn't happen for us. And Halifax were a very good team as well. You know, make no mistake, they were one of the bigger clubs in the division, a lot bigger than us. But we just felt that with the players that we had, with the manager we had in Mark Stimpson, we thought that we had enough to go on and win it. But it came down to the end of the season. We wasn't performing anywhere near the levels that we had been throughout the season. And because of that, we couldn't then pick it back up again once we got to the playoffs. And that's why I say I feel that if Stockport end up in the playoffs, it's tough. Mentally, it's tough.
You mentioned that you played under Gary Johnson. What was that like?
It was okay.
Yeah.
We never had we get on really well. But as a player manager, we've never had an amazing relationship. I think it's always difficult when a manager comes into a team that's had so much success. You know, we'd had back-to-back promotions under Darren Ferguson. Gary Johnson came in and he wanted to obviously have his own stamp on the team. And yeah, I don't think I was necessarily his type of player. So our relationship, I was very in and out of the team at that point, which, you know, they ended up selling me to Hull because I'd got back into the team and was doing well and scoring goals. But yeah, the period that I had with him, I enjoyed playing underneath him. I think he's a very, very good manager. He knows how to win games. It wasn't necessarily the style of football that I loved to play, but he knows how to win games. He's a born winner, and his record speaks for itself. He's got a ridiculous amount of promotion. He's got more promotions than me, so he's definitely done well. But yeah, I don't know. He wasn't my favourite manager, but he wasn't definitely not my worst. That's for sure.
Yeah, we saw him when he was at Yeovil a fair few years ago now, and the impact he had on them, taking them as far as the Championship, bringing in players. We had a Yeovil fan talking about that a couple of weeks ago on the podcast, and it shows. Do you feel personally now he's at Torquay that in the future he could take Torquay to the Football League? Like the previous year, they were almost there. But
definitely.
Yeah,
definitely.
Low.
Yeah, he's a manager that I think that he just has the know-how of getting promotions. I think he sets his teams up very well. He's a very good manager. He's very detailed in what he does. And yeah, he's a good manager. He's a good manager. Like I say, I always look at managers and think my relationships with them doesn't necessarily mean whether my relationship's good or bad. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're a good or bad manager. I think I look at him and I respect him so much. I think he's a very, very good manager. And Phil Parkinson as well. I played under Phil Parkinson at Bradford. Our relationship wasn't great at the end, but I respect him as a manager. You know, I think what he's done at Wrexham is outstanding. And I think there's some very, very good managers at this level, and those two especially are two of the top managers.
This is a question for you. Who would be the perfect manager to play under now in the National League?
Who would be the perfect manager for me?
If you were back in your playing career, for you, how they play, etc., who would be that manager that you'd want to play under?
Definitely the Stockport manager.
Dave Challinor.
Yeah, Dave Challinor would be the one. Do you know what it is? Either Dave Challinor or Pete Wild. And I'll tell you why. So Dave Challinor, I just think he's so cool, so calm. His organisation is brilliant. His attention to detail is brilliant. And you see by the results that he gets, I think he's a brilliant manager. Pete Wild, he's just such a nice guy and so honest. I love honesty in a manager. That's a huge trait for me that I've always loved about managers, is those who are just honest. Say it how it is. Don't try and sugarcoat things. This is how it is. This is how it's going to be. And I can respect that. I can respect that in a manager. And that will make me go and run through a brick wall for a manager. I think two of the best managers are Daryl McMahon, who I've worked under. I think he should be managing in the Football League. I honestly compare him to Darren Ferguson, who I had so much success under. He's very, very similar. And Luke Garrard, you see what Luke's done on such a tight budget. He's pulled rabbits out of hats at times. So listen, there's so many managers you could go through. Neil Ardley, brilliant manager. Yeah. There's so many, but I think the number one for me would be Dave Challinor.
Yeah. You mentioned Garrard, you mentioned Wild, you mentioned Challinor, Ardley. One trait about them is they always take responsibility for defeat, even particularly when the team may not have played well on the day. He says that manager will say, "Oh, I hold my hands up here. I put the wrong tactics out, don't they?" And that's one positive trait about them.
That's brilliant, and that's brilliant for players. And bear in mind, a lot of the time they shouldn't be taking responsibility. A lot of the time it is the players. I know as an ex-player that there's times when we go out on the pitch and we just don't perform. We don't follow through the tactics that the managers set out. But the manager's job is to take all the pressure, whatever negativity is going to come from the press, from the fans and whatever. It's your job to take that, relieve all the pressure from the players, and just let the players go and play. And the ones that do their job more often than not play, and the ones that don't, you have to make the hard decisions to make changes. But those managers that you've just named there, yeah, they do it brilliantly. They take all the pressure off of the players, and that's exactly what Dave Challinor is doing right now. He's been brilliant in this run where they've not been picking up the results, but he's like, look, if we have to do it on the last day, we do it on the last day. It doesn't matter. Like he's trying to take all the pressure off of the players.
I was listening to a Stockport podcast, and they mentioned that Dave Challinor said in one of his interviews, he said back when they were, more or less unbeatable in the league, he said in his interviews, there will be a game where we'll be defeated, a bit of a freak result where we shouldn't really lose. And it's just about preparing for that. And that is preparing in itself, for him to prepare for a defeat like that and know what to do when that defeat does come. Shows a brilliant manager, doesn't it?
Yeah, 100%. And what I like so much about him is he doesn't get too high when they're doing really well. You don't see him celebrating and getting too carried away. So then when things don't go their way and it's not great, he doesn't get too down about it. He just keeps on a level playing field. He just keeps above the line. And that translates to the players. If a manager that's very erratic in their emotions, good or bad, it feeds through to the players. And because he just stays very one level, that will help his team no end. And when it comes to these final two games, they'll be in a better position to go and get results out of them than if their manager was very up and down emotionally.
We've got a question that's come through the chat. Question for Aaron: which game will you be attending on Sunday?
It depends. I think that depends on Wednesday. I don't even know. I don't even know where I'm going to be on Wednesday, on Sunday. BT will decide that, I guess, after Wednesday's game. But
I could see it being at Stockport, Halifax. I believe we've almost sold out our allocation, and the whole of Edgeley Park is going to be sold out. Now, no matter what happens, that's going to be one hell of a game, isn't it?
oh, unbelievable! I think there's going to be cameras and at both games. You know, I think that, but I think in terms of all the pundits and myself and Matt, where we're going to be, I think it's in Stockport's hands. Stockport can dictate whether or not we're at your game or whether we're at Dagenham. So yeah, ask me on Thursday.
Yeah, I will do. Yeah, it's gonna be an interesting upcoming days, isn't it? Now, when you look at Dagenham, they're just outside of the playoffs. They can mathematically get into the playoffs, depending on how Chesterfield do. Could you see that happening?
I could see it happening, definitely. I covered the last game of the season last year, and exactly the same fixture. And Dagenham should have beat Wrexham. They ended up drawing on the day, but it meant Wrexham didn't get into the playoffs. And Dagenham are such a dangerous team because of the way they play and the firepower they've got. They're such a dangerous team. When they turn up, they can go and hit you for 6.
Yeah.
But it's consistency's cost them this season. Consistency and injuries at the wrong times. Their squad's not big enough to be able to cope with it. But going there on Sunday, listen, they've got something to play for. They know that if they win by whatever means necessary, if they win, they've got a chance of getting in the playoffs. The form Chesterfield are in, I can see Woking beating them. And then it's just down to Dagenham to do their job. So that'll be a tough game for Wrexham.
I could, like you said, I could actually see it because Wrexham, although they're such a fortress at the race course, I've noticed they're not as good away from home this season, like Woking away. Even Weymouth, I know they won 6-1 in the end, but they were 1-0 down at half-time. I could see Dagenham defeating Wrexham, even in the circumstances that Wrexham need to win. Anything could happen, and I know Woking, they were a very good side when they came to the shares. Aside from me personally, that I feel have underperformed this season.
Yeah, I think Woking are a team that they're a strange team because they pull out some unbelievable results and then go and lose or draw some games with really poor performances. The consistency isn't there, but that's why they bring in a new manager. You know, they bring in a new manager so that he can see from now to the end of the season what he feels he needs. I'm sure his recruitment next season in the summer will be very good, and there'll be a team challenging. But I think it's going to be difficult. The last day of the season, we will definitely see some shock results. Yeah. There is no question. All the teams that you think are going to go on and win, the pressure will get to them because at different minutes in each game, one team might be leading or one team might be in the playoffs. One team might be out of
the stadium, won't it? Yeah.
Those nerves, there is no way on earth that you cannot know because of the reaction of opposition fans. Opposition fans cheering when you drop out of the playoffs or when the team that, you know, you're expecting to do you a favour is flying. So it's a tense day and it's how which players can handle it.
Yeah,
you'd be surprised how many can't.
An example of that was when Stockport played Chesterfield. And as soon as I think Stockport were winning 1-0 and Wrexham had just conceded in the last minute, the roar you could hear around the stadium, what I've seen in the social media, when it's like they'd scored a goal. It were better than scoring a goal.
I'd never seen anything like it. I think when the roar went up, it was a throw-in. So everyone was like, what's happened here? Yeah. And we have an earpiece in. So they're telling us back in the studio that Bourne would have just scored. And the cheer that went round the stadium was incredible. And that is exactly the atmosphere that is going to be at all of these grounds come Sunday. And the players have to be able to shut that off, concentrate on doing their job first, and then worry about everyone else afterwards. And Chesterfield especially just need to go there and get a result.
Yeah. It's in their hands, which is a positive from their point of view when you look at Chesterfield. Two sides that we haven't mentioned, Grimsby and Notts County. Do you fancy their chances in the playoffs?
I fancy Notts County more than Grimsby. I think Notts County, I just look at their front three, and they are devastating. You know, Roberts, Wotton, and Rodriguez are just deadly. They're deadly strikers. 19 goals apiece for Rodriguez and Wotton, 15 for Roberts. On their day, they can beat anyone, hands down. I think that they've let themselves down a bit, because I think that they should really be pushing higher up. I think they should be at least pushing for that top three, and inconsistencies within their squad has cost them. But I've said, come the playoffs, that's when the big players turn up, and they've got three of the biggest players in the division that are capable of putting anyone to the sword. So they're definitely a team that I think could be dark horses. Grimsby, I really like Grimsby.
Yeah.
Whether or not they've got enough, McAtee's their talisman. And if he's on song, the rest of the team's on song. If he's not quite at it, the rest of the team doesn't seem to be quite at it. So it will depend on what his temperament's like on those playoff games. But they'll be desperate to get back to the Football League at the first asking, that's for sure.
That hasn't happened for many years. I believe the last side to do that was Cheltenham. I believe it might have been, was it 2014? I'm not too sure, to be honest. But you look at, I've attended both games of Notts County and Grimsby, and Notts County at home, they're a good side, but they've been so inconsistent, haven't they, Notts County, since they've come down to the league. They have a very good run, and people are saying, oh, they're going to be dark horse in the playoffs, and then they're going to lose silly games like to Barnet, Kings Lynn, silly results like that they may lose to. But when I watched the Notts County away fixture, obviously there was the interruption with the red card from Halifax's perspective. We still managed to get a point there, which was a crucial point at that stage in the season. Mm-hmm. But yeah, Notts County, when I look at them and how good of a footballing side they were on that night, all they lacked was a clinical goal scorer, which Wotton can be on his day, can't he?
100%. I don't think he'll be there next season, whether they go up or not. He's out of contract at the end of the year, and there'll be a whole host of clubs tracking him. But he'll want to sign out with a promotion. He'll want to be the person to take that football club back into the Football League, because there's huge expectation at Notts County. Every manager that goes in, they expect them to get them promoted back into the Football League. And when it doesn't quite work out, when it's not quite going their way, they'll make a change and bring someone else in. So whether or not they can handle the pressure will remain to be seen. I don't think that they have this far. They're in the playoffs, but they should have been a lot higher up than they are, and I think they'll be a little bit disappointed. But they've still got another chance to make things right.
They're probably that club that they have the biggest expectations of getting back to the football, just based on their history and how they came down to the division. Like losing to Harrogate in the final a couple of years ago, I'm sure you saw that game.
Yeah.
You think of how close you were, and since then it feels like they're going the other way, doesn't it? Compared to last season where they got to the semis. This season it's looking like they're going to be struggling in that eliminator round. But yeah, Notts County, I feel they could be a dark horse in the playoffs. So could Grimsby. Like I watched them on both games, and I thought we were quite fortunate to actually get 4 points out of them. I know BT Sport were covering the away game at Grimsby. And on the day, I'll be brutally honest here, I thought they were the better side. I just thought we were clinical. Would you agree?
Yeah, and I think it's going to get, once we get to the eliminators, one of those teams are going to batter someone. And then all of a sudden people will be like, oh, okay, right, they could be in with a chance. Because thus far, no one's really spoken about Grimsby going up. No one's spoken about Notts County. All the talk has either been about Wrexham, Stockport, Solihull, or Halifax. That's it. No one else has really had much of a mention. I know a lot of Halifax fans have been upset with Virgo because Virgo never mentions them.
Yeah.
No one seems to like Virgo. It's quite funny, actually.
Yeah.
But yeah,
go on.
No, go and say it.
Oh no, it doesn't matter. There was the one time. It was. I'm sure it was a basic mistake, but on BT Sport on the highlight show, they just totally missed Halifax Town out. It just made me laugh, to be honest, just because you just knew it was a mistake. I'll admit that. But yeah.
Yeah. Do you know what's funny? Like, because you can't please everyone. Yeah. And I'm sure that actually was probably a genuine mistake. But it's so funny. The amounts, different times in the season, you'll see a host of one club will complain about something. We're forever getting complaints from different clubs. It's actually funny. And most of it's aimed at Virgo, which is quite pleasant to see. It's not aimed at me, so I don't mind it too much.
Yeah, but you're quite to be honest, you have quite a level head in, like, discussing teams. But what made me laugh, to be honest, was Notts County. A few Notts County fans were saying we never get a mention on BT Sport, and I thought that just made me laugh, to be honest. And even Wrexham fans, I think, were criticising them as well. Every club will criticise BT Sport, won't they?
Do you know what I must say? And not just because I work for BT Sport.
Yeah.
Every single club in the National League should be over the moon with BT Sport, because I've played at that level for, at the beginning of my career, at the end of my career. If I'd have had the coverage that BT Sport provide, that would have made a huge difference to me. Whether I get one game on TV or whether I get 12 games on TV, I would have been over the moon, because the league's being covered in the way that it is. And with the highlight show, I think it's unbelievable what they do. And I'm so grateful to be a part of it, because the National League's obviously close to my heart. And to actually be able to be part of it and to be going down to all the different clubs and seeing all the different sets of fans is an honor for me to be involved in. So I honestly think that the ones that criticize BT Sport, you have to be careful what you wish for, because if they ever pulled it, that would be a huge blow to the division.
Financially as well. And it shows, I think for you personally, I think what you probably will enjoy is going somewhere like Wrexham with the atmosphere and the Football League feel traditionally. And then you go to somewhere like Maiden, and no disrespect to them, but you get a totally different, feel, don't you, about the place. And I think because of the divide in stadiums, etc., and where the cameras will be put and everything, it must be interesting from your perspective.
It's brilliant. It's brilliant, but you feel involved. You're close to the fans. You get to speak to fans. You're in amongst them, and it just brings me back to when I first started. That feel that I used to get when I'd be going down to the record order shop or when I was at Grays. It's the real grassroots, really grounded feel, and there isn't that divide between yourself and the fans. It's a very close-knit thing, and that's what's so good about the National League. And I think that's why BT love it so much. A lot of the guys that are in charge of running the National League, that's their love. They love the National League. They've grown up being part of the National League, and that's why it means so much to them, and that's why they work so hard. Like, they don't scrimp on the production. No. You look at the production that they get. League 2 and League 1 get nowhere near what the National League get. So, like I say, it's one of them things that, yes, as banter, it's always good to hammer BT, but in the grand scheme of things, be careful what you wish for, because for me, they've been unbelievable.
It's a privilege for me personally. Although I usually go to most of the BT games this season, I always have it on record when I get home just to re-watch the match, because you don't usually get the full match on YouTube. So it's great for me personally to analyse it, and it's something that the managers can also use as well to analyse their games when they're looking at it back as a whole, and general players too.
100%. I think everyone's more visible. Every player, every team, everyone's seen, and you're seen by not just players and managers in the National League, you're seen by everyone. You know, whoever chooses to watch and check in on the National League. I come from Peterborough, you know, in terms of club wise, and I know Peterborough are renowned for plucking players from the National League. You know, myself, George Boyd, Craig McHale-Smith, all three of our top players, all came from the National League. So that's the formula that a lot of clubs have now followed. And for your players to be portrayed on TV so regularly can only be of benefit to the league, and in terms of attracting players from a higher division to come down. They can watch a National League game, see how good the standard is, and that makes a difference, because a lot of players won't necessarily drop down leagues if they know nothing about it.
It's an example of that is Huddersfield Town, for example, a local side to Halifax. The amount of former non-league players in their squad, it's unbelievable. Sober Thomas currently just left Bournemouth, didn't he, the previous season? You think of him and how well he's doing there now. Like, some are probably thinking when he was at Bournemouth, you know, quite an average winger when you're looking at it from a perspective of another club seeing that he'd only scored 4 goals or something like that. He's whipping it up in the Championship now. Another player, Matty Pearson, formerly at Halifax Town, a quality player for us. There's so many players in that Huddersfield setup that have formerly been in the National League, and there's plenty of clubs like that in the EFL and in the Championship too. Jamie Vardy, someone that's in the Premier League now for Leicester, formerly been at Halifax Town. I think Troy Deeney as well, he's been in the non-league setup too. It's unbelievable, isn't it, how clubs progress through having just simple TV coverage.
There is so many. Like, you could literally go through so many clubs and just pick name after name after name of players that have come through the National League or been in the National League at some point. And that shows that the strength of it. It shows the quality of the clubs, the managers, and the players that is producing. And being able to see it on TV as well every single week, like I say, can only be of benefit. If you're a club that, you might not be the best club, but if you've got assets in your team and your assets are being able to be seen by the bigger clubs, and then you're able to go and sell them and make money and improve your club, it can only be a good thing. So yeah, the National League's been brilliant for so many different reasons.
Yeah, this is just a question that's just suddenly come in now. Question for Aaron: is this the most competitive season in the league?
That I've seen.
Yeah.
Because there's so many good teams. The finances of the top two are far and away bigger than it's ever been at that level. And you just look, and even the clubs that have come down from the Football League are struggling to compete. You know, Grimsby are in the mix. Southend, up until Kevin Mayer got there, were looking like they're going to go and get a third relegation in a row. So it's the most competitive I've ever seen it, and I think it's only going to get better.
Scunthorpe and Oldham coming down next season are their two traditional Football League clubs. In fact, you've got the lads of Oldham who've previously been in the Premier League. I think they're the first club that's been in the Premier League that have actually, you know, gone all the way down to the National. They're going to Notts County were in the traditional First Division.
Yeah.
But Oldham, they're going to be the first former Premiership side actually in the National League, and it's mad, isn't it, how sides have been demoted 4 leagues. Well,
yeah, incredible. It's incredible, the demise of some clubs, and whether it's the governance of these clubs, you know, how poorly they've been run, or whether it's the finances, there's so many different factors that contribute towards a club's demise of, you know, from Premier League to National League. But they're big clubs, regardless. They're big clubs all coming into the National League, and again, it's only good for the National League, because you want the big clubs in there. You want big names. You want, when you're looking at the fixtures, Right, I'm going, oh, we're going here. Oh, we're going here. They're a next league team. Oh, we're going here. That's the next league team. It's brilliant. It's brilliant. And it gives the smaller clubs something to be excited about. Gives them something to test themselves about. Their fans, before this, they'd never seen big clubs like that. So it's amazing for everyone concerned.
I saw a Dover fan on the forum actually say what you've just said, and like, oh man, going to like the race course of 15,000, even Halifax 14,000 it holds. Going to stadiums like this is a privilege for them, and it's a shame that you've got sides like Dover who are going down the league now with, you know, the minus point deduction, etc., and poor ownership. Finally, then I will ask you, who would be the two sides for you who will get promoted this season?
Okay, I'm gonna say I'm sticking with Stockport winning the league.
Yeah,
I'm sticking with that. I'm gonna say it will be Wrexham, because I think Wrexham will be in the playoffs, and I think they'll be fine if they're in the playoffs. If the roles are reversed and Wrexham do win the league, then I'm gonna say Solihull. I
think for me, I'm trying. Like I said earlier, my heart's saying Halifax, but my head's saying Wrexham and Stockport. I think I don't know. I just have a feeling Solihull won't do it. I just have a slight feeling, maybe a selfish point of view. But Stockport, for me, I still think they're going to win the league. And then I'd probably say, I think there'll be something will happen in the semi-final. It'll be a bit of a shock, and Wrexham will get knocked out, and we'll play Notts County or Grimsby in the final. I could actually see that. I think Chesterfield are going to struggle in the playoffs. Personally, they're not go even if they sneak, even if they can sustain a place, they're not too confident. They've got no momentum going into the playoffs. For me personally, I think they're going to struggle, and Dagenham do get in. From what I've seen of them going to both fixtures at home and away, I personally don't think they have the ability to go on to win the playoffs. However, as we know, the playoffs is a lottery, isn't it?
It is. And listen, I think anyone, you could just literally pick a name out of a hat once you get to the playoffs. It really is that simple. It's so difficult to get to the final, and then we saw in the final last year, it gave us everything. You know, it literally gave us absolutely everything. I don't envy the two teams that get to the final, because to follow the Hartlepool Torquay game is going to be near on impossible. But any team that gets there deserves it. But you must say, if Wrexham don't get promoted, wow, what a blow that's going to be to them.
Yeah, same as Stockport, don't imagine, like if they don't win the league. Yeah, for me, like I'll stick with what I've said of Halifax and Stockport getting promoted. But it is a lottery. And talking a bit about last season, how Hartlepool managed to get promoted. Like they were fourth for the majority of the season, currently where Halifax are sitting. I would have never expected them to get promoted. Like I would have thought Stockport or potentially Torquay had they'd finished second in the league. But it's funny, isn't it, how the playoffs can plan out, isn't it?
And that is exactly why we can't write off anyone. Anyone that gets in there, you can't turn around and say, well, they're not going to do it or they're not going to do it, because we've seen Hartlepool do it. Hartlepool, no one would have thought that they would have even been in the mix. At no point would anyone have turned around and said Hartlepool are going to be the team to get promoted. The same as when no one's really spoken about Notts. No one's really spoken about Grimsby. Yeah. Everyone's writing Chesterfield off. It will end up being one of those teams that go up, and we'll all look wrong. You know, we'll all have egg on our faces. So let's see what Sunday brings. See who's in the shake-up, and it's going to be interesting regardless. It's been a brilliant season so far, and I'm looking forward to the twists and turns from now until June the 5th.
It's going to be an emotional end to the season from a Halifax point of view. If that's positive emotions, if that's negative emotions. Aaron, I do really appreciate you coming on. I do appreciate it. Thanks for coming on, taking the time out.
No problem. And by the way, you're brilliant.
Cheers,
Seriously, your confidence, your delivery, your knowledge is excellent. This has been one of the best interviews I've done. So
I appreciate that, Aaron.
Fair play to you. Brilliant. I really enjoyed it.